Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
Coming up on episode 236 of Wheel Bearings, it's just Sam and Robbie this week with the GMC Sierra, Subaru WRX, VW GTI, the new Morgan three-wheeler, Polestar's new aluminum platform, adaptive headlight rules, Virgin Hyperloop shifts to cargo, and driving top-down year-round. All that and more coming up next. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. This is Wheel Bearings episode 236. I'm Sam Abdul-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
I am Roberto Baldwin from The Verge. I just like saying The Verge.
The Verge this week. Is that new?
It is new. They reached out. I said yes, and now we have a mutual business understanding and how, as a writer and a publisher, try to navigate the weird world of media.
Well, that's always good to have that mutual understanding, that mutual business understanding.
Yes.
And Nicole is, I think, back at Disney again this week with her whole family, I believe.
Lucky.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go buy rocks today. Which is just like Disneyland.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you driving this week?
This week, I drove two vehicles. If you are in your 20s, or you're a fan of fun, enthusiast cars, maybe you'll be a little jealous. I drove the 2022 Subaru WRX and the new Volkswagen GTI. We'll jump into the WRX. I love the WRX. Now, that's me in the car. Driving the car. The exterior is, it feels at one point sort of plain, like the car just sort of blends in, but at another instance that weird cladding is also kind of, Subaru doesn't typically make a pretty car. How's that? They make cars, and this is from someone who's owned multiple Subarus, who's loved all of his Subarus. Who is a fan of Subaru vehicles, but they're not they're not beautiful. They're not Porsches. They're not Ferraris. They're not even, like, in some cases, Fords. There's something else, and if you can get past the exterior of the WRX, you're going to have a great time, especially if you're a fan of that vehicle and if you're a fan of that gearbox and if you're a fan of that turbo. I owned a WRX in 2002. I feel like they haven't really changed the gearing or the turbo lag since then. And you know what? That's fine. 2004 WRX is what I had. The fifth generation. It's great behind the wheel. It has this really, really short first and second gear, which I know throws a lot of people. It makes them very, what the hell's going on? Because a lot of vehicles, when you get into them today, like, you can get up to almost 60 miles an hour in first gear, which makes zero sense, but sure, why not? This is a very, they build this for rallying, and you want, a nice, short, just bam, 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 up until third, to have that torque, to get up hills and over dirt and jump precariously close to spectators. It has 271 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, and once you figure out how to drive that vehicle, it'll pay off. You're using every ounce of that power. The suspension, the handling is outstanding. I live near some nice twisty roads that are nice and twisty, but are not good roads. The good roads I have to go over a bridge. They're very.
What do you mean by good roads? Like,
they are
roads that
rutted.
seem like they've been paved within the last 10 years, or
Yeah, they don't feel like they've been paved or paid attention to. There's a lot of ruts, a lot of bumps, a lot of. If I drive a lot of performance vehicles on there, I'm just getting tossed about.
So, in other words, the perfect road for a rally car.
They are the perfect road for a rally car. That's what they are. I've driven the STI on these roads. I've driven the WRX on these roads, and they just chew up these roads like there's no problem. Yeah, no big deal. Like nothing else like the WRX and the STI can handle the roads. Everything, Veyrons, Ferraris, Corvettes, anything else I've driven on this road, you're getting tossed about a bit when you're going around corners because there's just dips and just hard, like lifts because there's tree trunks that are, there's roots. Everything is messing up these poor roads. And so you're like, okay, let me slow down. Let me do this. Let me get tossed about. The WRX, good to go, ready to rock. It has it. And here's the fun is that it's all these things that make it a rally car, and then barely some stuff that bring it into the 21st century. Like the infotainment system it's fine. Subaru's infotainment system, it's you're better off. It's essentially like, hey, plug in your phone is the Subaru infotainment system. So yeah, plug in your phone. You're going to be fine. Everything. I mean, it has Starlink, which I've never used. I've never called anybody. I don't. The seats are comfortable if you're a fan of sort of sporty seats. It has this wonderful. It has that WRX exhaust note, which, if you've ever hung around people who vape a lot, you probably heard it. It is. I feel like
it is a unique sound. There's nothing else quite like it, from that Boxer 4-cylinder.
Yes, that Boxer 4-cylinder is something else. It's 2.4 liter turbocharged Boxer. When I had my 2004, the gentleman that would work on it for me used to call it the sewing machine.
Yeah, I think that's a good description.
Yeah, he's like, do you need a oil change in your sewing machine? I'm like, yes, I do. It has eyesight. It has all this, this stuff. You definitely have to get it at the manual transmission. This is very much an enthusiast vehicle. This is where, on one hand you have all these like, pretty nice Subarus that, they have CVTs, but they do what they need to, that what needs to be done. They have a lot of room. You can throw some dogs in the back. And then on the other hand, you have the WRX and the STI and the BRZ. So you have these almost conflicting personalities that are coming out of Subaru. You have this very utilitarian part of the company, and then you have this very enthusiast part of the company. And I'm a fan of actually both. I do wish some of the the Impreza, I wish it had more power. It feels just sort of like but yeah, you know what I miss? It's a sedan. I wish it was a wagon. But it almost this is where I am right now because of driving this car. The plan was to sell my 2014 BRZ. Wait a year. Wait till the second year of the new BRZ, and then buy that because I love the new GR86, new BRZ. Outstanding. That has been thrown because of this new the WRX. So I'm like, well, maybe I should just get a WRX. I mean, I had a WRX before. Why don't I just go back to a WRX? Even though it's not a wagon, and I dearly wish it was a wagon, but it is not.
Yeah, it's a shame. They used to have that hatchback that was almost wagon-like.
Yeah. That was my snowboarding machine. I would take it up to Tahoe. It had all-wheel drive. I put all seasons on it. It had turbocharged Boxer engine, and I love that. It was my favorite car ever. That vehicle, that 2000, the bug-eyed WRX sport wagon. So, so it's a toughie. If you're a fan of WRX. I know I know people got really angry about the design. People have been getting angry about Subaru designs for a long time. That's sort of like par for the course.
I mean, that goes back pretty much to the very first Subaru. They've always been a little unique.
Yes. Yeah.
And they got less unique, over the last decade or so. But now they're adding some of the weirdness back. I mean, you remember the XT Coupe from the I think it was the early '90s, late '80s, early '90s.
That was such a fun little weird car.
Yeah, I mean they've had a lot of strange designs.
Yes, and I for one, I am happy whenever I like weird cars. So, I wish this one was a little bit weirder. It does have like this sort of combined with like blah on this one, but they should have gone a little bit more weird. But I feel like they're probably like, we got to sell a lot of these because we're a small player, really, in the grand scheme of things compared to everyone else, and we can't just keep hoping that Toyota will help us sell cars.
Kind of a strange design choice to add the black cladding around the wheel arches. The previous generation didn't have that. Just had sheet metal right down to the wheel arches. And now you've got, it's like they're trying to make it look more crossover SUV like, trying to give it that kind of feel. Kind of Outback kind of thing.
Were people were they saying, hey, I'm getting a lot of scratches on the wheels of my vehicle. Could you throw some cladding? Was that a thing people were doing with WRXs?
I mean, maybe if they were actually using it as it was, designed to be used, as a rally car, it's possible.
I guess. Yeah. All right, sure. So there you go, WRX. I really liked it. And now we're going to talk about the 2022 Golf GTI. This is you can only get the Golf GTI and the Golf R now in the United States. They got rid of the little low-end TS because no one was buying it. Everyone just bought the GTI. This is essentially what happened, which is fine. I understand. It was delivered on, I believe, on a Tuesday. I didn't have a chance to drive it until Wednesday morning. I was very busy. And I went out to the car, and I sat in the car, and it was an automatic transmission, and my heart sank.
Oh. There should be no such thing as a GTI with an automatic.
I mean, that's just how we are as a human race now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it has that 7-speed Tiptronic automatic transmission. I wish the gearing was a little bit more aggressive, but that's only because I was excited about driving the GTI. It has paddle shifters, so you can take care of. You can use the paddle shifters. I've driven the R with a manual transmission, and that was fine. I wish the transmission was a little bit better. It feels a little sludgy on the R. But yeah, whatever. You're buying an R. You're going to be happy. So this is the Golf GTI, and having driven both of them, I'm going to say that I prefer the GTI versus the R. I know that may be blasphemy. It's front wheel drive as opposed to all wheel drive. But it's a fun little car. It's everything that a little hatch needs to be. I drove it around town. I had a good time. It's nice and small. It's easy to park. It's got the exhaust note that I believe is somehow fake a little bit. I think they say so. It doesn't matter. It's enhanced. That's the word. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Yeah. I don't care. We're in a world where EVs make space noises. I don't care. If you have to do weird things to the exhaust note to pipe it into the speakers, who cares?
What? A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to drive. I haven't driven the new generation GTI or Golf R yet, but at the Mama Rally in 2019, I think, I got a chance to drive the GTI and the Golf R back to back at Road America. And I agree. I liked the GTI then. I mean, this was the previous generation. I liked the GTI better than the R, even though the R is more powerful. I think the extra weight and the all-wheel drive kind of it smoothed things out a little bit too much, and it felt while it had higher limits, it didn't feel as tossable, because it would rein things in. Whereas the GTI still had that classic GTI feel of you can fling it around corners. It felt more nimble, and it didn't accelerate to 60 quite as quick, but it was still plenty quick enough, and it had that sporty feel that you want out of a GTI.
Yeah, I think we should and you're thinking about it's in your brain when you look on paper, you're like, well, I should want the R, I should want the R. But if you're thinking about the R, go drive the GTI. If you absolutely positively have to have that power, if you absolutely positively have to have all-wheel drive, fine, get the R. But drive them both, drive them back to back. If you have hopefully if you're a fan of manual transmissions, they'll have some in stock.
Assuming they have anything in stock, but
yeah, assuming they have. That's the other.
Assuming they didn't all burn up on that cargo ship on the Atlantic last week
with those Aventadors. Oh, that's a tough. Whew. Yeah, drove it around. I think they're combined is 28. I think I got 27.1, which is fine. I had it for a few days. I really, really enjoyed it, except for those buttons. This weird I don't know what the hell. It's those buttons, man. And you're like
it's got touch controls, right?
Yeah, and the touch controls are on the they're on the steering wheel and they're on the dash. And they're really tough to get used to. And you're gonna, you bought a car, you're gonna get used to what how it's controlled. They're buttons, so they're actually there. But I found myself trying to turn the heater down, and all I kept doing was turning the sound up because the buttons underneath the infotainment system don't light up at night, which makes it so that's where I know that's where that's
just
heat,
wrong.
There's like it's like the.
I mean, if you can't feel for it, if you have to see it, you light it up.
Exactly. Like make them the little weird touch controls. And so that's on either side of it are the heat and the cool, and then there's the audio. And somehow I just kept either turning it up or turning down. Anyway, I wasn't adjusting the temperature. I was doing something else, and it was getting kind of annoying. And I couldn't see it, and I just couldn't see what was going on unless I turned on the overhead light, which that's not a great look. Like every car that has like climate controls has had some sort of illumination backlit or something.
Yeah.
It was really kind of annoying. And you're just like, oh, this car's great, and then that happens. You're like, come on. So let's see. The car I was driving, the base price for the GTI was $35,000.
They've gotten up there.
Yeah. The one I was driving was 36. Yeah, they didn't throw too much stuff on there. And then
like just the DSG.
Yeah, and then the Subaru, the WRX, the starting price is $29. So I don't know what they didn't have like a real Monroney for this. It's it doesn't give me the price of everything that's on it. And I'm too lazy to add stuff. They just threw a stereo speaker and a moonroof, so I don't know, it was probably about 33, 34. But for money, for fun, the STI, better value. I'm sorry, not the STI, the WRX.
Yeah.
WRX. It doesn't look as cool. The GTI is it still looks like it still looks like a Golf. It looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
They had a nice bright red version for me. They gave me a blue blue WRX. But for just old school, like going for it, manual transmission fun, the WRX is probably the way to go. But you really can't go wrong with either of them, to be completely honest, except for the color, or except for the design. You'll get used to it.
But once you're behind the steering wheel, you don't notice the design anymore. Yeah,
that's the thing. You're kind of like, this is fine, whatever. Yeah. You're like, what does it have this? No, I don't care. Does it have all these like future? No, who cares? Who cares? No, who cares? You're rolling around a 6-speed manual transmission. You're blasting through first, second, and third in about 10 seconds. Like who cares? Who cares? You're having the time of your life driving over roads that would destroy other vehicles, and
including probably that GTI.
Including that GTI, that GTI gets tossed a bit on those back roads near my house. Fortunately, I can go over a bridge, nice, smooth, twisty roads that you can take anything on. Just near my house, the twisty roads are also pitted and whatever.
Trust me, I'm quite familiar with pitted roads, especially this time of year here in Michigan. Over the last 2.5 weeks, we've cycled back and forth every few days between temperatures in the teens, low teens and 20s, up to 50, and back down again and back up again. And each time it got cold, it snowed, and then it melted and then froze again. And Michigan Avenue, just down the road here, has got these huge craters in it now. It's the typical Michigan February.
I've driven through Detroit a few times and through Michigan, and you're just driving like, oh my God, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I think there was a bug in there. I think there was a Volkswagen Beetle in that hole. That's what.
Well, fortunately, the vehicle that I'm driving has no problem with that sort of stuff, because I've got the 2022 GMC Sierra Limited AT4 Duramax. So this is full-size GMC Sierra pickup, 4-wheel drive, crew cab, short bed, with the 3-liter inline-six diesel, which is still a fantastic engine. So a few months ago, GMC announced a mid-cycle refresh for the Sierra, but it looks like initially the refresh gives a redone front fascia and a new interior, but it looks like for launch they're only launching that on the Denali Ultimate and the new AT4X trim. So basically a couple of high-end trim levels, and I'm guessing the rest of the lineup will get it for the 2023 models. And so if you look at the GMC build and price site now, you'll see that all the 22s, they don't have the refreshed ones listed on there yet. All the 22s are variations of Sierra Limited. So if you see Sierra Limited, that is actually basically a carryover 2021 model that, as a 22. So it's a 2022 model, but it's unchanged from the 21s. So they added the Limited in there to indicate that this is the older look and the older interior, which is not bad. It's not
fine.
It's not quite up to the premium look and feel inside of a Ram pickup, but it's fine. And the AT4 is sort of the off-road, the 4-wheel drive off-road package. So this thing's got big, knobbly, all-terrain tires on it, and it's got a 2-speed transfer case, so you can get 4-wheel drive low if you're going over doing some rock crawling. And this thing, it sits up a little bit higher than most of the other Sierras. This is a equivalent to like an F-150 Tremor, Ford F-150 Tremor, or a Dodge Ram Rebel, that type of setup. The interior, this still has the older 8-inch touchscreen display with the older generation infotainment system, so it doesn't have the new Android Automotive infotainment system that was on the 22 Tahoe that I drove a couple of months ago. The 22 Yukons get that, and that updated Denali and AT4X, they have that, and presumably the rest of the lineup will be getting that for the 2023 models. So it's a perfectly workable system. Although again, it's funny, after driving more and more vehicles with 12, 13, 14, 15-inch screens in there, the 8-inch display just seems so puny. It's a good-sized display, but it just seems so tiny in this massive dashboard compared to the other stuff I've been driving lately. But it does have support for wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. As one of the neat features that GM put into the current generation Sierra and Silverado when they launched them a couple of years ago, in the back seats, you'll see a little loop sticking out from the side of the seat cushion in the second row seats. You pull that, and the middle section of the seat back on each side is hinged. It opens up, and there's a little hidden storage compartment behind the seat there, between the back of the cab, the back wall of the cab, and the seat. So if you want to stash some valuables that you want to keep out of sight, that aren't stuff that's not too large, you can stick it in there. It'll be nice and secure. The truck that I'm driving also has I think what they call it, the multi-flex tailgate, which you can put in about 62 different configurations. So you have the center section of the tailgate that can drop down separately from the main tailgate, and it's got a piece that flips up, so you can use that as a step when it's down, or use it as a backstop when you've got the main tailgate up, or just leave that part down and leave the middle section down. So if you got long items to carry, so they're sloping down towards the front of the bed, so they're less likely to slide out the back. So a lot of different ways you can use that. Very, very handy. Lots of USB ports inside the cab, both USB-A and USB-C. There's also a wireless charging pad. One of my favorite aspects of this truck, and the other current generation GM full-size trucks and utilities, is that 3-liter diesel. It is a fantastic engine. When they launched these new trucks in, was it 2019? They came out, I think. I was shocked. When I was at the reveal event for both the Sierra and the Silverado. The Silverado was shown first, and they announced this engine. In 2019, they launched an all-new diesel engine for these things. It wasn't a derivative of anything they'd done before, like the V6 diesels that Ford and Ram had in their trucks. This is a brand new design that shared nothing with any existing diesel, and it's really good. It's relatively quiet. It's extremely smooth. You don't feel any vibration from it at all, because it is, of course, an inline-six cylinder, which is probably the second most perfect engine configuration you can have after a V12, which is the same thing, but two of them, and 277 horsepower, 460 foot-pounds of torque. The version, the configuration that I have, which is the four-wheel drive AT4 short box crew cab, has a maximum tow rating of 8,800 pounds. Depending on which configuration, like if you get the two-wheel drive short box non-AT4, you can get up to 9,200 pounds towing. It's roughly in that 9,000 pound class, which is very, very good. It's enough for the vast majority of what most people are ever going to need in terms of towing. If you need anything more than that, you're probably going to be stepping up to a heavy-duty truck anyway. But probably the most impressive thing about this engine is the fuel economy. I was just driving the F-150 hybrid a few weeks ago, and it was very cold weather when I had that, and I think I got 16 or 17 miles per gallon with that thing. It was not quite as cold, but it was still pretty cold over the last several days as I was driving the Sierra, and it is EPA rated at where is it here? With the four-wheel drive AT4, and this is, as I said, with the all-terrain off-road tires. So this is not the most efficient version of this. At 20 city, 23 miles per gallon highway, and 21 combined. Depending on which, if you get, I think the two-wheel drive base models, you can they have up to 30 miles per gallon highway rating and about 23 or 24 highway or city. Driving around, mixed driving over the last several days with the Sierra, I've been averaging 23 and a half miles per gallon.
It's a big, that thing is huge.
It is. This is a 3-ton truck. So I mean, this is, to get 23 miles per gallon driving around town with this thing, almost 23 around town. On the highway, I've gotten as much as 25, 26 miles per gallon with this thing. And as I said, the AT4 is lifted. It's got a higher ground clearance than the other trim levels. It's the off-road truck, and these are not low rolling resistance tires. These are big honking tires. To get that kind of fuel economy without even really trying is really, really impressive. So if at least until the electric trucks become more widely available. If you need a full-size truck and you are concerned about fuel economy, which, given the way fuel prices have gone in recent months, I think it's up to almost $5 a gallon out in California, right? For gas.
Yeah.
And especially if you're going to tow. If you want to tow, I would absolutely recommend that you get the diesel. Because one of the big advantages to the diesel engine is they really work well under load. And with a gas engine, you can actually get higher tow ratings with some of the gas engines on the Sierra and the other pickups as well. But when you hook up a 7,000 pound trailer on the back, your fuel economy usually gets cut in half or worse. So instead of 20 miles per gallon, you might be getting 10 miles per gallon. With the diesel, it's like, yeah, you got a trailer on the back, fine, whatever, I don't care. You might drop by 1 mile per gallon, at worst. It's remarkable. Or if you're towing, if you're hauling a lot of payload in the bed, if you're hauling some rocks home, a lot of rocks home in the bed of this thing, the diesel won't even flinch. So if fuel economy is a concern, then I would absolutely recommend getting the diesel option in one of the GM trucks. Ford is I don't know if they're still available, but they've announced that they're discontinuing the diesel in the F-150, which, given that they're about to launch the Lightning, is probably doesn't matter. But I think Ram is still offering diesel for now, but I don't know how much longer it's going to be available. I suspect that GM may keep this diesel going till the end of the current model cycle, so probably another 2 or 3 years until they redesign these trucks. But it is definitely highly recommended in this thing because, as I said, it is smooth, quiet, and remarkably fuel efficient for a vehicle of this type. The base price on the AT4, the limited AT4, is $56,300, and this one, with the options it had on it, which includes the premium package that gets you the power rear sliding window, the premium infotainment with nav, the wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, the wireless charging pad, and a bunch of other stuff. That adds about $3,400. Another $2,000 for the technology package with all the extra cameras and the surround vision with trailer camera, rear camera mirror, and assorted other stuff. All told, including the $1,700 destination charge, $64,715. So this is not an inexpensive truck, but it's also not, when you price it out, against a comparably equipped Ford or Ram, it's going to be they're going to be in the same ballpark. And unfortunately, this is the reality of the world we live in, where trucks. Everything's getting really expensive. All vehicles are getting really expensive, but especially trucks. But if you need one, the other thing I should mention, is even with that kind of off-road suspension package and those big tires, this thing actually rides really well. And it's really well controlled. The driving dynamics are outstanding. It doesn't have the rear coil springs like the Ram does. It's still got leaf springs on the back, but it feels really stable. There's minimal body motion, even with nothing in the bed, and on the way the pavement around here is at this particular moment in time, it just rolls right over those giant potholes and doesn't even flinch. So there is that. So $65,000, not cheap, but it is an excellent truck.
Yeah, trucks are powerful expensive, except for the Maverick, which I got now, but I'll talk about next week. And that is a game changer, which is kind of a backwards because this is sort of trucks we had before. But anyway, next week we'll talk about the Maverick.
Yep. All right. Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
Between client meetings, managing your business, and everyday tasks, who has time to worry about website hosting? With Kinsta's managed WordPress hosting, you don't have to. They handle the technical stuff, delivering lightning-fast load times, enterprise-grade security, and 24/7 365 human-only support. Simply switching to Kinsta could make your site up to 200% faster. Kinsta's custom dashboard makes managing sites easy, with powerful features designed to save you time and effort. Plus, their free expert-led migrations ensure a smooth transition. Ready to see why Kinsta is trusted by thousands of businesses? Get your first month free at kinsta.com. That's KINSTA.com. Kinsta, simply better hosting.
So let's get into some of the items of the week. Big news this week. I think probably I would say probably the biggest news of the week. There's an all-new Morgan three-wheeler. For those of you that aren't weirdos that follow Alex Roy,
That's
Morgan,
the only first anything Morgan. I always think about Alex. I'm like, what Alex doing right now?
Well, he just got his Tesla towed this week, and it was having some challenges getting it back. And he posted a fun little video standing outside the tow facility, about 20 feet away from his car, and contemplating on Instagram whether or not he should just use the summon feature to just extract his car without going in and paying whatever the exorbitant charges are for getting towed from a place where he was actually legally parked.
Yeah, I
know. It's anyway. The Morgan three-wheeler. For those not familiar with Morgan, small British specialty sports car maker that's been around for well over a century. Until relatively recently, they were still making cars that had frames made of ash, as in wood, and they also make this peculiar little machine called the three-wheeler, a trike. 2 front wheels, one rear wheel, and until last year, Morgan three-wheelers didn't look much different than they did in the 1930s, and they used a V-twin motorcycle engine that was hanging off the front of the vehicle, and those are getting to be pretty much impossible to get certified for emissions almost anywhere. So they have designed a completely new three-wheeler that still looks like a Morgan, but now you don't have that V-twin air-cooled engine on the front. They adopted a Ford 1.5 liter 3-cylinder, made it up to a Miata 5-speed transmission, driving the rear wheel. And what do you think of this thing?
You know what? It's weird. I don't know if I'd want a Morgan. They've seen cars with four wheels, so they know they're out there. They know.
And they make cars with four wheels.
Yeah, I know. The Morgan three-wheeler is always just going to be an oddity and something that you buy and be like, hey, look at this. If a Lamborghini and a Ferrari and a Morgan show up, everyone's going to ignore the Lamborghini and the Ferrari. That's because you've seen those.
Yeah.
Like most people haven't seen a Morgan three-wheeler in real life. It is. They make like 4 a year or something. I don't know. But yeah, I more power to them. It looks cool. I like the way it looks. I like that they put in an actual car engine in there for emissions. It still has a manual transmission, which is great. So yeah, no, I mean, if Morgan called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to drive this around?" I'll be like, "Yes, I do." Do you want to buy this? That's a totally different. That's a whole other conversation. But for those who are interested in something that's different, this is definitely different. And all your Miata friends are going to be like, "Ooh, wow."
I like the photo in here with the suitcase strapped to the side on the driver's side.
Yeah, you just strap your stuff to the side of the car. That's like it's
so you get a little extra cushioning, but when you get T-boned by somebody.
Yeah, like it's a horse. Like you just have a
saddlebag.
You have saddlebags for your vehicle. It's a Morgan three-wheeler. You're going to buy it and you're going to drive it around and you're going to turn a lot of heads. You're going to have some fun. And then, you'll put it away and then you'll get in your, Toyota Camry and go to work that day.
Yeah. It's a great Sunday morning, go out for a ride in the country.
Yeah. It's a cruising around car.
Although, I know Alex, has used his when he was living in New York. I don't know if he even still has one. He's owned a couple of three-wheelers over the years. He used it to cruise around Brooklyn and Manhattan. So,
yeah, that's Alex though. He was gonna summon his car out of the police impound lot.
All right. Kind of the opposite end of the scale from the Morgan is Polestar. One of their upcoming models, Polestar has decided to go with a very unique and original naming scheme for its models with single-digit numerical model names. They've got the Polestar 1, which is their original plug-in hybrid coupe, the Polestar 2 sedan. They got the Polestar 3 crossover coming later this year. And I think coming late 2023 or early 2024, there's going to be a Polestar 4, which is a smaller crossover. And then there's the Polestar 5, which is their flagship sedan that's coming. And the 5 is, right now, all the Polestars are sharing platforms with their parent company, Volvo. So the Polestar 2 is the same architecture as the Volvo XC40. The Polestar 3 is going to be sharing its platform with the XC90 replacement. The Polestar 5 is an all-new platform, purpose-built for Polestar. And from the Polestar 5 onwards, they apparently are no longer going to be sharing platforms with Volvo. Everything is going to be purpose-built for Polestar. And this one is kind of interesting. And Polestar has an R&D facility in Coventry, England. And apparently they've hired a lot of engineers from another British company that's based in about 100 miles or so east of Coventry. Maybe it's less than that. A place called Hethel, called Lotus. And you would never guess that from looking at this particular architecture. It's an aluminum space frame that's bonded. Looks like a lot of aluminum extrusions mixed with a few stampings and some castings. Most of it is glued together. And if you are a fan of Lotus, you would probably find this approach very familiar because this is something that Lotus invented for the Elise some 25 odd years ago. It's since been used to varying degrees by a number of other manufacturers, the same concept. The F-150 has a lot of bonded aluminum. So basically, this is aluminum pieces that are glued together, not welded, not riveted, not bolted, but glued together. What do you think?
I mean, it's great that they're going for, anything that's more lightweight but still strong is good for an EV. It's also something that's it's proven to work. And that's the thing. If it's proven to work, it's worked for Lotus, worked for the F-150, which is the number one selling thing ever. Then I think they're on the right track. I think as a sort of a smallish company with a lot of money behind them and a sort of biggerish company behind them. If you go to the Volvo headquarters in Sweden, there is a Polestar. Their like little headquarters is there. In there's like a little box. They actually have like a box building that they built. It's just like a big cube on the campus, which is it's kind of cool because you're just driving and you're like, boom, there's like a little Polestar thing. So even though they're sort of moving away from that platform, they're still going to have that DNA of safety when it comes to Volvo. I mean, they're not going to want to be the ones that are like, hey, we did something that's a little bit unsafe. That's not in the Volvo or really the Swedish DNA at all.
Yeah, and as you said, the ability to make something that's really strong and really lightweight is going to be important for EVs because it's funny when I was coming home the other day after coming home from the airport, right after I picked up that Sierra, I was waiting at a traffic light, just after I got off the freeway, down the road here from my house, and as I was sitting at the red light, coming around the corner in the opposite direction was a big white Hummer EV, which is the opposite of lightweight. It's 9,000 pound curb weight. It's like GM could have used a little bit of this sort of approach, I think, with Hummer and the upcoming Silverado EV, because those things are just absurdly heavy.
I think that the seats in the Hummer EV probably weigh more than a Polestar.
Yeah. Yeah, they probably have steel frame seats or something. Cast iron seats. Okay. Let's see what else we got. Adaptive headlights. So, have you ever driven anything with these new adaptive headlight systems?
Yes, and they're awesome, and only in Europe, obviously. I think every automotive journalist at some point in their career has written an article about why don't we have adaptive headlights in this country? What is wrong with this country? I think we've all read that study from, I think, 2012 or 2015, where, like, once it blinded a motorcyclist, or like, yep, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's crazy impressive how well they work when they work well, and it's also insane that we haven't had them here.
Yeah, and for those not familiar with them, I mean, traditional headlights that we've been using for 100 years, whether they're old seal beams or more modern halogens or LEDs, for the most part, they basically consist of having a light source, a bulb of some sort, and a reflector and a lens that casts a fixed pattern on the road. You turn on the lights, and at night you can see there's a fixed lighting pattern, and it almost never changes. The only variation we've had is some lights that will actually steer into corners, but it's still the same pattern. It's just being shifted to one side or the other when you turn the steering wheel. So if you've got low beams, you're going to have a limited area that you can see. With your high beams on, it lights up a different area, and everything within those high beams that's coming towards you is going to be blinded. And the idea with the adaptive headlights is now moving to something more sophisticated that has some sort of mechanism to control the light pattern that you're putting on the road, so you can have different patterns for different situations. So as you're driving down the road, if the sensor detects a vehicle coming towards you, or a motorcycle or pedestrian, it can, or actually mostly for the vehicles, it can actually dim or dip the pixels, the lights in just a portion of your field of view where that vehicle is. So it's like, putting on the high beams just for that region where that vehicle is. Everything around it is still lit up with your high beams, or
low beams for that vehicle.
Low beams for the vehicle that's coming towards you. Everything else around it is high beams, so you can still see what's there. Or when it detects a pedestrian, it can light up that pedestrian. I remember at the LA Auto Show a couple years ago when Audi was showing off the e-tron Sportback. They had that demo that they were doing off to one side, showing the different kinds of lighting patterns where you can have brighter strips emanating from where your front tires are, and showing where your tires are pointed. So if you turn the steering wheel, you'll see those lines where your tires are moving to one side or the other. So you can see if you're going, heading straight down the center of the lane, or shifting to one side or the other. All kinds of funky things that you can do with these things. And now they're finally going to be legal here in the U.S. pretty soon.
Finally. And what's crazy is that a lot of automakers, especially European automakers, the hardware's there on the vehicles. Mm-hmm. They're like, we keep putting the hardware. As soon as NHTSA changes the rule, it's just the software update. We can just turn it on.
Yeah.
And I think the last 20 years, people have gotten way more excited about driving around with their high beams on all the time, blinding me and blinding everyone. I hate the people who are driving. If you can't see without the high beams, you shouldn't be driving at night. That's when there's other cars around, you shouldn't be driving at night. That's the real issue. But to sort of solve that horrible habit and crime against humanity, now you could drive around with your high beams and not blind everyone else on the road, because every other vehicle, whether you're driving behind them or they're coming at you, that gets cropped out by the lights. So, if someone's right behind me with their high beams on, I'm not going to go blind, but I'm going to get the benefit of all their extra light, because all the light that's sort of going around me is lighting up the world, and I can ooh, look at that.
Yeah, so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration announced that they're drafting the final version of the new regulations now, and should be out in the next couple of months. And then 45 days after that's published to the Federal Register, those adaptive headlights will be legal. I sent a note to Audi to ask if they're going to have an update that's available for their existing vehicles that have the adaptive lights. And they said they're looking at it. Depends on exactly how the regulation is worded. Mm-hmm. But they may well have an update. So if you have a recent Audi model that's got the adaptive headlight hardware on there, you may be getting a software update available that makes your lights work much better.
And Audi's really been pushing it for years, and I've talked to Audi more than any other automaker about this. It's sort of their jam, and so I'm sure there was a big party when this happened, and I'm sure there'll be another big party when it's available and if, depending on what the hardware is and, like they said, the rules, they can turn it on and make just delight their customers, I guess.
All right. Next up, Virgin Hyperloop made an announcement this week. For those that have been following the Hyperloop for almost a decade now, since Elon Musk first announced the idea. Not that it was an entirely original idea, which his stuff rarely ever is. But when he put out his little white paper, announcing
what if
this
we
concept,
did this?
He said, "I'm not going to do this. We're not going to build this, but I'm open sourcing it so anybody else can try this." And a whole bunch of companies popped up, including one that was originally called Hyperloop One, or it was Hyperloop Technologies, and then eventually became Hyperloop One, and then got bought out by Virgin. And they've been developing the idea. So far, nobody is even close to actually deploying it commercially. There's some test tracks in various places around the world, including one near Las Vegas. And Virgin Hyperloop announced this week that they are, and the idea the Hyperloop is you've got these pods that go through these vacuum tubes at speeds up to 700 miles an hour. Get you from San Francisco to LA in 30 minutes. Of course, to do that, you have to accelerate the thing at very high rates, and then decelerate it at very high rates. And I think, there's some challenges with that kind of acceleration or deceleration. This is why astronauts get a lot of special training to deal with that. So Virgin Hyperloop announced that, we're not going to do passenger carrying with these things. We're only going to do for cargo for the time being, and they're gonna focus on shipping cargo, because cargo doesn't care how fast you accelerate it for the most part.
I covered Hyperloop technologies for a number of years when it first came out, and even then I was just like, well, this makes zero sense, but let's go for it. And my general takeaway was a lot of stuff that was happening in the Hyperloop space could be transferred to other forms of transportation, but there's so many issues. Like first, one issue is everything has to be vacuum sealed. Now I've been to a bunch of the Hyperloop events at next to SpaceX, where they've built a half mile or quarter mile Hyperloop, like a miniature scale Hyperloop, and between each, and this is SpaceX, and it's next to SpaceX, people who shoot rockets into space. And it was like colleges that come out and they put their little pod in and they'd shoot it down the tube. It would take, they were always like, oh, it's only going to take like 10 minutes to like create the vacuum. And it would always take like 45 minutes. So at the beginning of the day, I'm going around, I'm talking to everyone, I'm getting my interviews, I'm doing my videos. And then at the end of the day, we're all just sitting there in the hot sun in LA, just baking, waiting for things to go through a tube that we can't even see.
Yeah.
And so you have so first of all, you have to create a vacuum over hundreds of miles. And either you have to create like a bunch of chambers and then open them, close them while this little pod is flying through this tube, or you have to create one giant vacuum, which makes zero sense. So there's that. There's also the infrastructure issue. You have to get people to let you build a big tube on their land or buy infrastructure. And they're like, well, you can build it next to trains. I'm like, well, just build a better train.
Yeah. Just upgrade the train tracks.
Just upgrade the train tracks. And those are already there. And you can still use those for regular trains. It was, and the idea that people are going to be super happy to sit in a tube, in a vacuum, in the dark.
Yeah.
For any length of time. There's just a lot of, and they're not very big, and a train works much better. There's just all these like sort of issues, but it was always like, okay, well, some of this can be transferred over to regular transportation, and of course they're the transportation of goods. I think they're trying to do something in Long Beach or San Pedro along the lines with Hyperloop and tubes and goods. But really, this is, I mean, if you've ever been to Costco or to a bank in the 90s where they had the little tubes and they stuck them into a vacuum and it got sucked in, it's that, except with people. And that's not a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think people would enjoy that kind of trip very much.
Yeah, that's
the fundamental problem with with anything that is going at very high speeds is you have to get from zero speed to that high speed in some period of time, and to get to do like between San Francisco and Los Angeles in 3 hours or in 30 minutes. I mean, you have to have a very high rate of acceleration, and the human body is not really designed for that kind of acceleration for the most part.
Yeah, the sort of all on go. That's not it. And again, I mean, we can look at the rest of the world and say, oh, like they have high speed trains where they're carrying hundreds of people at once, as opposed to a pod. There was just a lot of the infrastructure, having to buy up all that land and put all that. I'm like, there's already infrastructure for trains and for planes. Like, I don't see how you're gonna. Yeah, it seemed doomed from the beginning, but I was just like, well, let's see what happens. Maybe they'll maybe they'll figure it out, but apparently they didn't.
All right. Finally, as we hopefully are winding down towards the end of winter in the northern parts of the country, somebody posted on Twitter, one of our patrons, Bryn Berenshausen, retweeted a video clip from a Boston TV station of somebody driving down the highway in very cold, very snowy highway in a convertible with the top down, and said, this driver is living their best life. And I totally agree with that philosophy. I mean, if you're going to drive top down, go for it, in the cold. Although the particular one that was posted by this TV station, if you watch the video, and I'll include a link to it in the show notes. If you watch the video, you'll see that it's hard to tell. I think it's a Miata, but I'm not 100% sure. But you can see the back end of this thing wiggling back and forth as it's going down the road. So clearly, this person is driving way too fast for the conditions. Given how slippery the road is, fine, drive with the top down in the snow. I've done that before. I have no issue with it, but make sure you do it at a speed, or make sure you have winter tires, so that you're doing it so it's still stable and safe. But that got me thinking about. I used to have a job in Detroit and then in Dearborn, and had a regular commute along I-94 between the Ann Arbor area and the Dearborn, Detroit area. And for several years, at least once or twice a week, I would see this light blue Honda S2000. And the driver in it was a fairly tall guy. And I would see this car year round. Like even when we had a polar vortex, it was 10 below zero, 15 below zero. And he was driving his S2000, happy as a clam, top down. I have never seen that car with the top up. I haven't seen it for a couple of years, so I don't know if he's still doing it. But back in 2015, the Detroit Free Press did a story on this guy. They interviewed him. And I've got pictures of him somewhere that I took one time when I saw him. Always top down in his S2000. He's an IT guy in Detroit. So what have you ever driven a convertible top down in winter conditions?
Yes. You turn the heater on if it if it has heated seats, like that's even better. Like I don't, I've had the the top down. I had a Del Sol and I would drive it around LA and it would be so hot. And I would have the top down and the air conditioning blasting, and I would just yell decadence as I was driving down the road. Like, that's the whole point. Like, you're driving around the Bay Area, it gets really cold and really, like, moist. Top down, turn that heater on. It doesn't. Who cares? Who cares? Go for it. No, it's that's the whole point of the convertible, is to have to use the convertible bit. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever driven one in the snow. With the top down.
I've driven Miatas with the top down in the snow. Press cars. I don't drive my own just because I don't want it exposed to salt.
Yeah.
But as soon as the snow melts and we've had a good rain or two to wash the salt off the road, I get the Miata out and I drive it top down and just turn up the heater.
Just ready to party.
Yeah.
No, that's the whole point, and that's the whole point of the convertible, is to enjoy the elements, to enjoy the world, to have unfettered access to everything around you, as much as you can in a convertible, but more so than a regular car. So I applaud anyone who's out there who's driving top down with a convertible or a roadster or whatever. I applaud you. You're the hero.
Just make sure you put on suitable tires.
Yeah. And I wonder if that person did that person know they were going to be on video? I think some people, they sort of drive a little faster, a little bit more aggressive when they think they're going to be on video.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's how that's how we end up with a bunch of videos of cars in ditches, leaving a cars and coffee.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, look, there's someone shooting some video. I'm going to do a burner apple block.
Okay. During the Chicago Auto Show a couple weeks ago, I had a chance to sit down with Steve Kosowski, who is the long-range planning and strategy manager for Kia North America. And we talked about what Kia is doing. They were showing off the new Sportage plug-in hybrid. They also had the EV6 there, and all their other stuff. And so I'm going to drop that in here, my conversation with Steve Kosowski about what Kia is doing. So Steve, we just heard James talking a little bit about the Plan S, I think it is. This shift for Kia as a brand. Let's start off with that. Where do you see the Kia brand going, and how do you differentiate it from your corporate siblings that will remain unnamed for the moment?
Well, first, Sam, we should circle back and get all the clarity on the brand distinction. I'm much more focused on product, but the brand is overarching. The way we're shifting the brand, firstly, foundationally, it's becoming more and more electrified, which is lots more hybrids, lots more plug-ins, and a lot more battery electric vehicles. So the proportion of electrified vehicles is just increasing by a magnitude every year. So that changes the dynamics and the characteristics of the car. Power, performance, fuel efficiency, how the car drives and feels. And I think a good sort of reference for the distinctions between the brands is evident in, for example, the EV6 versus its counterparts, right? Our EV6 is, sporty is an overused word, but it's much more bold, distinctive, original. Some say it's radical, and
a little more dynamic looking.
Yeah, right. And so, it rides on a shorter wheelbase. The driving dynamics are a little different. Hi, Michael.
Yeah, I'm just going to listen in. You guys can have
Okay.
I can learn something.
Okay. So I think that sort of execution on EGMP characterizes how you can make the cars feel different using the same bits and pieces, right? And if you look at, for example, look at the Sportage versus its counterpart. The Sportage has a very unique, distinct character in its design, form, language, and execution, but yet it rides on the N3 architecture, right? So, and then there's other, look at, for example, Sorento versus Santa Fe, those kinds of things. So I think, the brand folks can specifically talk about the brand distinctions, but the character of the cars, I think, is really messaging how the brands are different, right? Maybe we're more youthful, we're more dynamic, maybe even a little more techy in some respects, whereas the other brand is more mainstream, something like that. But I can't speak for the other brand. It's not my position.
No, and I mean you can driving the various vehicles across the brands, you can feel some of that distinction. You can certainly see it, in the character of the design, but you can also feel it in terms of some of the choices made, how things are executed. Let's dive a little deeper into the whole electrification strategy. Certainly, Kia's been doing some really impressive things with electrification going back more than a decade now.
Right.
So when the original Optima hybrid and the plug-in hybrid launched, and and then later the Niro and now the EGMP, the Soul EV, was a great option in its time when it was available here. So where do you see kind of the mix and the choices for Kia as you go more and more electric, between hybrid, plug-in hybrid, battery electric?
Firstly, thanks for recognizing our history. We used that point actually in some discussions recently that we have more than a decade's worth of electrification going back to the Optima hybrid, and even before that with if you remember the Ray EV in Korea, and even before that there's been lots of efforts in Korea. There was a Forte hybrid and a Rio hybrid, and even, Sam, as far back as the Seoul Olympics. I don't know if you've ever seen the EV van that we had.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
okay. Anyways, so as I mentioned, more and more electrification in every subsequent year, and that's more hybrids, more plug-in hybrids, and more battery electric. So each one of those powertrain disciplines will see more and more applications across the range for a variety of reasons. One is, we have a decarbonization plan, right? through the end of the decade, actually beyond that. But so that means more electrification, naturally. And I'm not at liberty to reveal, which cars are going to get hybrids at what time, or which cars are going to get PHEVs and so forth. But the point is, the proportion of our volume that's electrified will be increasing. The point I think we can all agree on is it's up and to the right.
For sure.
Yeah, right. And so, a lot of that, frankly, is driven by market interest.
Mm-hmm.
There is rapidly increasing market interest in EVs. Some OEMs, as a matter of fact, Tesla, they saw what they referred to as a profound awakening for battery electric vehicles. We're sensing it right now with EV6. You have people on forums who are checking the cargo vessel, the shipping vessel destinations, so they can match that with a local dealer, call them and get a car. And so, to me, that's a good barometer. And then there's a lot of other syndicated data, Sam, that I don't know if you read it or follow it, but it definitely shows legitimate...
I write some of it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, you're right. Of course you do. That's right. So you know that there's legitimate interest in the market, right? So we sense that. But a battery electric vehicle may or may not work for everybody, and degrees of electrification are starting to proliferate. People like hybrids. They like plug-in hybrids, and these cars keep getting better and better and better in terms of efficiency and refinement and dynamics and integration. So we're aligned with that, right? So I hope I'm answering some of your questions.
Yeah. So at least through this decade, you expect a significant proportion of Kia sales to continue to have a mix of hybrid, plug-in hybrid, as well as battery electric volumes.
Right.
One of the challenges I think for a lot of consumers, as good as your plug-in vehicles have been, and I have often recommended the Nero electric, as an option for somebody that's looking for for an EV, with a reasonable amount of range, at a relatively reasonable price point. It's just availability. Your plug-in vehicles have been limited to the California and the other ZEV states.
That's not 100% true. So the PHEVs are 50 states.
Okay.
Yeah, and the EVs have been more than ZEV states because you have Washington, Texas, Georgia, Hawaii, right? Plus
a few of the key markets.
Right. But as of March of last year, they've been all 50.
Okay.
EVs, yeah.
So the EV6
that's all
launch 50. Is going to be okay. Well, that's great to hear.
And Nero EV as of, like I said, March of 21. As a matter of fact, in February of 21, we sent a letter to all the dealers and said, we're going all in on EVs. We want you to get ready on chargers, tools, and training. We even offered some subsidization for that. So by I think it was June. If you double check the Polk registrations, you can see that mind you, it's like one or two that were in North Dakota and whatnot, but pretty much all the dealers are on board. So
that's great to hear that the availability is much wider, because that has been a challenge for obviously in the past and
yes.
still is. What about supply constraints? Are you able to meet the demand that you're seeing from customers walking into Kia dealerships for your plugins?
Yeah, so a couple things. One is we launched Nero EV, and then we got supply constraints, and our dream and our volume aspirations were cut a little bit, and some of that is related to battery supply, which has been resolved, and some of that related to other factors. Europe really needed some cars more than we did, but that's changed. As a matter of fact, this year, actually last year, the Nero EV volume was way up over the previous year, like 2.3 or 2.4x. So we got our supply. We really cranked up the EVs, and that's the same with EV6, right? So you've probably seen, Sam, that in Korea there's a 13-month waiting list, right? And even GV60, I think, is 6 months. But we double-checked this, and basically we're told that our volume plan is earmarked. It won't be diverted or cut or whatever.
As long as you get the chips you need.
Yeah, right. And that's that's a legitimate hang up. There's little bits and pieces on the car that for example, the pop-out door handles. We wanted to put them across the board, but that takes processing power.
Right.
And so you have to step back and manage the product plan accordingly. So, but we're confident and comfortable that our supply, be it chips and batteries and everything we need for EV6, is in place, and we're going to get the cars we need. It may or may not meet demand. Again, demand for these cars is really strong. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good problem to have. And unfortunately, because of the semiconductor shortages, that's a challenge that everybody is facing pretty much across the board.
Right.
Getting enough to meet demand. But at least on the battery front, it sounds like your battery supplies have gotten to the point where you're able to build what you want for different markets.
Yes.
So, and then the Nero, recently revealed a new Nero in Korea, I think. When's that coming to North America? Is that later this year or next year? 2023?
I don't know that we're
confirmed it yet.
Okay.
Exactly.
It might not come.
Okay.
You never know.
And the fact that I've seen them running around, near the Ann Arbor Tech Center is completely irrelevant, right?
Until we buy a ticket, we're not necessarily in the show.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
What Michael said.
Yeah.
There's tape from this. There'll be a moment.
Yeah, I'm sure. There always is.
If you made a guess it was coming, that's your guess.
Yeah.
You'd be fine.
Okay. Good to hear. All right. One other area that within the larger group that Kia has not been involved in up to this point is fuel cell technology. Is that something that is ever likely to be part of the Kia lineup in the next decade?
So
I have a specific answer on that. If you have one, that's okay.
Please, you first, Mike.
If you want to expand on this, it's all right. We were told that there will be a Kia hydrogen vehicle in the future.
Okay.
We've been told that from HQ. If that's what you were going to say, good. If you have more than that, okay. But that's we were told that a couple of months ago.
Okay.
So I'm going to defer to Michael on that.
I didn't say in this country.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. That's an important point. Yeah.
Yeah. That is an important stipulation.
So as you,
obviously Korea, the Korean market, has had more support for fueling infrastructure, which has been a challenge here.
That's where exactly where I was going, Sam. Our parent company and our own engineering is really good at fuel cells, as you know, and they have multiple efforts in multiple different segments around the world. Some's commercial, some's retail, some stationary, and very, very confident and very, very good at that technology. And we sense here that there is potential, but it may be more focused, and I'm not speaking of Kia, I'm speaking of the market, maybe more focused on commercial, on trucks, but that's all contingent on fueling infrastructure, and that's been a hang-up, let's be clear. And there aren't enough stations. We know from reports on other brands and other products that part of the ownership experience has been a headache. And so that's just one part of it. The other part of it relates to dealer readiness, right? They're about
that's hard enough with battery electric vehicles.
Exactly. Just a couple of years ago, there's a great article, you probably read it in Automotive News, where they interviewed Longo Toyota. I don't know if you read it, but if you didn't.
Yeah, I think.
Right. And so he talked about it was $958,000 for dealership readiness for service and repair and everything else. And I think in the context of our go-to-market plans, our current electrification plan, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, in shifting mainly to battery electric, that's a less resistive path because of the infrastructure and because of the dealer readiness. So in the end, Sam, look, the engineering and the technology is really good. Our company is very agile. If there's opportunities we see, we can prove a business case, great. But our Plan S is really focused on battery electric, plug-in hybrid, and hybrid.
So one last area you referred to, less resistant, reducing friction. One of the pain points with EVs can be charging. Some companies are doing some things with aggregating multiple charging networks through a single interface. Others have invested directly in charging infrastructure. And then one of the things, again, within the larger group, I know engineers at the Tech Center in Ann Arbor have done a lot of work with wireless charging. There's a pilot going on with GP60 in South Korea. Is that something that you see as a potential thing that might make its way into? Do you see potential for that within the Kia lineup, as particularly for plug-in hybrids, which often, I know from studies that have been done, a lot of people that buy plug-in hybrids don't actually plug them in, which means you're wasting that battery, and you're dragging around extra weight, and you're not getting the benefit that you could.
I hear you, Sam. And, a lot of it just relates to the plug-in hybrid buyer who doesn't want to put a charger in at home, or it's kind of a pain, or he doesn't see a need to do it. We sense that too. And firstly, we understand the criticality of charging, right? So, for example, we have an offer with ChargePoint that's coming on the EV6, right? So if you get an EV6 First Edition, you had a choice between a ChargePoint Flex, 1,000 kilowatt hours of Electrify America Energy, or Apple iWatch. So, understanding that, is an indicator of our understanding of the need for charging, particularly battery electric home EV charging. The second part relates to the Electrify America 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy that comes with it. Maybe the third part relates to the ultra-fast DC charging on the EV6, and the fact that we've had standard DC charging on all of our EVs since the Soul EV. So we totally get the need for charging and the criticality for charging at home and in the public space. With respect to app aggregation, firstly, we are, the new Kia Access app and Kia Connect. Those are fresh redesigns, and we totally understand what other automakers have done and why that can work, where everything is integrated, right, from my Kia Access app, or but it's a lot of engineering work, and but I'll leave it at this, Sam, that we understand the need for it. So stay tuned. And then the other part related to infrastructure or public infrastructure, that's another one where there are a lot of initiatives in the marketplace that are happening, and we're very cognizant of the need. We're very cognizant of the what works and sort of how to do it, I guess you could put it that way. And but we're not ready to announce anything. And I think that any kind of broader infrastructure effort or announcement or plan is a little further out. Yeah.
What about wireless? Is that something you think could be of some value to HRD customers?
Yes. So the wireless is another interesting one. I don't know if you dug into this, Sam, but many years ago we had a project with Mojo Mobility, and that was the same deal, which is the plate on the floor and the plate on the bottom of the car. Yep. And we gave them, I think, 19 Soul EVs, and they experimented with it with Hachi. And we see the merit in that. In other words, to your point, if I can just drive my EV or PHEV in the garage and not have to lift a finger, that's beautiful. But there's complications that arise, and here's what we've learned. Firstly, it's not cheap. That hardware is $2,000 to $3,000, and it seems like it's been $2,000 to $3,000 for 10 years. The cost reductions aren't really. We're not seeing the cost reductions we need. The second part is that there's various different ways to execute this, right? You can have a thing come out of the car. You can have something lift up. There's no one complete standard way to do this, right? There's half a dozen different companies that have wireless charging solutions, all with their own way. So it feels like if you're going to do this, the only real place you're going to do this is at home. Mm-hmm. Okay? This maybe the third or fourth part is that we realized that when you execute this, there's hardware that goes on the car, and it's heavy, mm-hmm. and you have to package protect for it, and it's in the front of the car, which means you have to crash, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to engineer around this, and a lot of the times it's not easy to put that much mass or that much volume in the front of the car and not have it affect the crash performance. So that's another part of it. So in the end, you step back and you're like, wait a second, we're going to put mass forward of the axle line, and we got to package protect for it, and it's expensive. And this is all because the customer doesn't want to take 10 seconds to put the...
So it's a lot more complicated than just putting your electric toothbrush on the stand at night.
Exactly. And that's the frustration. But, what we do see is that the wireless charging concept and the performance is remarkable. The charging speeds are getting better, the devices are getting smaller, and maybe the hope is that in the future, someday, maybe we will. But in the near term, it's a lot of complication and cost that a lot of customers, like the customer would say, okay, if it's going to cost the customer $2,500, is it really worth it? And it may work for other luxury brands, and I get that. That's pretty cool. But a customer might step back and say, look, I'm paying $35,000 for a plug-in hybrid. For $600 or $700 or $1,000, I can put a charge point flex in my house, and I'm good to go. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the balance. It just depends. So
Hyundai has a pilot program right now, so with wireless.
Yeah, and I know Genesis on the GB60 has a program.
That's through Whitetricity.
Yeah.
Is their
right
there. I was in the wireless space for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're Momentum Dynamics before.
Good memory. Yeah. Everything he said is what I said to Momentum when I joined. It's great. You've got to get rid of all those problems, and you've got a model. But the other model there is high-use stuff. Mm-hmm. So if a vehicle is constantly in service, like a shuttle or a bus or a taxi.
Yeah, and I think those are potentially much more interesting applications for that technology.
Yeah, because then you can get rid of the driver. Yeah. And you can have this thing shuttling between two maglev points. Yeah. And the vehicle's charging itself. Yeah. It doesn't have to be dynamic. It can be static either side. There is a standard 1772 is the standard. But not everybody agrees with that. Momentum can't quite meet it, so they're trying to do something else. Yeah. It's a really interesting space. It's what you would want to do. It's how I charge now.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
But charging a car is different. To his point, the bit we could never get over is, the vision was to have them at Starbucks. Mm-hmm. Well, that means you've got to charge a Mini Cooper next to an F-150. Where do you line it up in the parking spot? Yeah. So public charging, just on vehicle dimensions, is really difficult. Yeah. Because I think Whitetricity baked it into the standard because they kind of built it that it goes in a certain spot in the centre of the vehicle. Well, that's fine, but if you're an F-150, your front end is now through the front of the Starbucks. Like it's difficult.
Yeah. Sim, what's your view? I mean.
No, I agree with what you said. I've done a couple of different studies over the years on wireless charging, and while it absolutely has potential, especially for certain applications, like for example a transit bus that along its route might have several stops where it's sitting idle for a few minutes, and a high-powered wireless pad there where it's stopped, could keep an electric bus going all day long. But I think for the most part, for light-duty vehicles, for consumer vehicles, it's the cost, as you said, is a problem. Certainly, the packaging and the crash protection is a challenge. The things that Mike just talked about, in terms of how you standardize the positioning, if at all, especially for public charging, it becomes a real challenge. Yep. And it's tough enough just with wired charging, getting everybody on the same page. We're getting there with that, but with CHAdeMO, hopefully fading away in North America, we're down to two standards, and maybe at some point in the future even one.
Right.
But charging, from the studies we've done at Guidehouse, the consumer surveys we've done, charging, is two of the top three barriers to EV adoption that we found are charging related, both availability and time to charge.
Yeah.
And then the other one being the price of the vehicles.
Yeah.
And so we're making progress on the price. Availability is getting much better, and time to charge, thanks to things like 800-volt electrical systems, is also getting much better. So we're making progress on all those fronts, and we're at a point now where the number of EV options is exploding. We've gone from a few months ago 20 EV nameplates in North America or in the U.S. market to
31.
And we'll be at 40 by the end of this year. And probably close to double that again by the end of next year. Different kinds of vehicles, different price points. So now you've gone from a very limited number of options if you wanted an EV to be able to choose the kind of vehicle you want and get it in an EV.
I couldn't agree more, Sam. It's people talk about a tipping point or an inflection point, and it's happening right before our eyes with vehicles like the EV6 and more and more EV SUVs coming, which is what the U.S. market wants, and pickup trucks, right? And so it feels like the market, finally, the product is what the U.S. market needs, and I think we're only going to see more of that, and that's going to feed on itself. Like, sure, your research proves this, but what we found is that the last time we checked this, it was about 25% of the U.S. market said, I'm in for an EV. And, okay, the fact of the matter is 3.2% actually wrote the check last year, okay? But every prior year to that 25% was maybe 20 and 18 and 15, so it's increasing. And then what you have is when you start to filter that for, I own an EV, and I'm going to buy, what are you going to buy next? It rises to 90% and 91%. And my point is, the people who are in EVs are never going back. And the more and more electrification you add into that sample, the more and more interest they have in buying another electrified car. And in a sense, it's feeding on itself. And now, again, with a really strong mix of utilities, and that's sort of writ large. That's vans, that's pickups, but mainly mainstream EV SUVs. That proportion of the U.S. buying public has so many good choices now, and it's only going to get better. So we think we're very positive and optimistic on it, and it's good to be a part of it.
Yeah. Now the big challenge for everybody in the industry is to keep up with demand for battery production and the materials that go into those batteries and recycling those materials. That's going to be the big challenge in the coming decade. We've got a lot of battery plants going in. And now we got to feed them with something.
And Michael and I, we talked about this a little bit with EV6, and our parent company in Korea has recycling efforts in place with SKI. Sort of a circle of life approach to use and reuse and so forth, and taking those minerals and materials and reusing them again and again and again.
Do you expect to start producing some electrified vehicles in Georgia at some point in the not too distant future?
I would defer to Michael on that.
We haven't confirmed it. It'd be nice to, and then we'll see. It's all about balancing lines,
Yeah. All right.
But, okay. So
thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, Sam. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
All right, and we're back, and let's answer some listener questions. We've got several of them this week, so let's start off with @AlbertBeck91. Albert asks, is the opportunity for a cheap new car gone forever? With dealer discounts, we've bought 4 new cars for less than $13,000 in the last 4 years. They got an 18 Chevy Cruze for $13,000, an 18 Ford Fiesta for $11,000, a 19 Fiesta for $12,500, and a 20 Nissan Versa for $13,000. With rising MSRP and no discounts, lots of folks may be priced out of a new car. What do you think?
I think it's going to be a few years before we start seeing those big discounts again on, this drive off for only $12,000 or, those, instant cash, all those sort of fun things, just because of the supply chain issue and the chip issue. They're they're barely making enough cars to meet demand, and in most cases they're not even meeting demand. And dealerships have no incentive in order to get cars off lot because they can't get any cars on lots. So it's a supply and demand issue. I hope that in a few years we can get back to having cars that like people can buy, like just regular working folk. I am a little excited about the fact that the Maverick starts at like $20,000. And it has a hybrid, so you're getting like some good mileage, you're getting a low cost, and a pretty good, and a good utilitarian vehicle. So you could buy that could be your car. Is this truck that is that's inexpensive compared to everything else on that's coming on out there. But yeah, I think it's going to be at least a few years before we see, because the automakers are going to build the things that make them the most money right now, and the dealerships are going to mark everything up. And the transition to EVs means that they're going to be, for a little while, they're not going to be making as much money as they were before. So we have to there's a couple things working against a really cheap car. But hopefully in a few years we can get something that people can afford without 5-year loans on some dealer lots.
Yeah, and we've talked about the dealer markups and stuff before. Obviously, the limited supply and inventories right now is making it tough to find a good deal on anything. There are still some relatively cheaper cars available. You're not likely to find discounts on any of them right now, but you can still get things like the Hyundai Accent for about $16.5 sticker price. The Nissan Versa starts at $15. There's the Mitsubishi Mirage, and there's a few others out there that are at that low end of the market. Even cheaper than the Maverick. The Maverick is a great choice, but obviously that starts at 20 and goes up from there.
Yeah.
And you're probably gonna have a tough time getting one for 20 grand. Although my next door neighbor did. I think it's going to be tougher in the future, to get those kinds of discounts and be able to negotiate on pricing, because even when the supply chain issues do subside, I think manufacturers increasingly are going to try and keep a tighter rein on balancing production with sales, and have less inventory at dealerships. You're going to have this, I think, permanent shift towards more people doing factory orders of the specific vehicle they want, and having less vehicles available in dealer inventories to choose from. And that's when they've got a lot of cars in inventory, that's when you can get those good deals. And I think that everybody is going to try to avoid that in the future. They like being able to sell them at sticker or above, unfortunately, in some cases. It's going to be tough to get those kinds of deals, especially on a new car.
Yeah. Sad times.
Yep. All right. At Surtur says, I've only owned 3 cars in about 30 years of driving. Is that weird?
No. I owned my 90 Honda Civic for like 15 years. Then my wife had some car. We had some cars that were my wife's over that time, but really, I had that car forever. And so, I think if you have a car, let's say your average is 10 years per car, that's a pretty sweet deal, because that means you love a car, or you like a car, or at least you can stomach a car for 10 years. Yeah. They get you around, you're taking care of it, it's doing a good job. Yeah.
It also means for most of that time you probably don't have any car payments.
Yeah, you're in the gravy years. If you have a 3-year loan, that's 7 years of gravy. That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
I wholly endorse that philosophy. I mean, I've owned my own vehicles for 36 years now, 35, 36 years, since I bought my first one of my own, rather than driving one of my dad's cars. And in that time I've owned 5 vehicles.
Yeah, see?
So, and that that includes 2 Mustangs, a Dodge Stratus, the '84 GMC S15 that I had through college, and my Miata. So, we keep our cars usually 8 to 10 years or more, and I think the vast majority of people actually do tend to keep their cars for a lot longer. The reality is most people never buy new cars anyway. Most people only buy used cars.
Yeah.
And, they tend to keep them running as long as they can. In the U.S., we sell about 3.5 times as many used cars every year as we do new cars. So, it's actually not, it's more unusual to be swapping cars every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I think the only new cars we've ever had are the 2 leases that we've had, and that's the Fiat 500 and the Hyundai Kona EV. Everything else I've ever purchased has been used. I've never except for my Vespa. Vespa we bought new.
But that's not a car anyway. So
it's not a car, so I don't know how that counts.
All right. Andrew Pappas asks, what bad car do you have an irrational love for? I want a Citroen X11 in the worst way. Problem is, most of them were cobbled together by the General in the worst way. Oh, Citation X11. Sorry, I misread that. He wants a Chevy Citation X11. And he says most were cobbled together by the General in the worst way. So for those not familiar with the Citation, this was came out in 1980. It was one of the first batch of GM's front-wheel drive X cars, their compact X cars. It was...
It's a car.
Yeah. had 4 wheels most of the time.
Yeah.
What bad car do you love?
Oh, the dog is very upset about this question. I really have to think about. Did you have a car? You tell me your car, and then
Okay.
while I try to think of something that I want that I know is bad for me, like a candy bar of some sort of car.
The Triumph TR7.
All right, yeah,
The TR7 came out in '75. I was a kid when it came out. I remember the ads for it, the magazines and on TV. It was the wedge, the shape of things to come, which apparently it was not. And it was built, at probably the depths of the British car industry in terms of quality and reliability. It was not well put together. If you thought that X11 was built by the General in the worst way, you should try a British car of that era. But when I was in high school, my auto shop teacher bought a used one from his brother that was not running. And I got to spend a lot of time working on that car over the span of a couple of years, and really developed an irrational love for.
You know what? I think I figured out the car. The AMC Eagle.
The
Because
original crossover.
The original car. Because it looks like a micro machine. It's like this, the micro machines have the kind of biggish wheels and they're kind of raised up. The AMC Eagle kind of looks like a micro machine. I've never seen more than 4 of them on the road at the same time ever. I've seen a lot of them in front of houses with things growing on them, and I had a friend, a guitarist, who had one. And it wasn't good, but it was just such an odd, weird thing.
Do you have a body style preference?
I like just the regular old sedan, not and usually I like wagons, but the sedan, because it looks just even more ridiculous. It's everything about this vehicle is just ridiculous. It looks out of place. Especially at the time, in the late 70s, early 80s, it just looked wrong, and there were a bunch of them.
Today it would fit right in.
Oh yeah, today it's fine. Today it's fine.
Subaru basically took that concept and did it right with the Outback.
Yes, exactly. It is AMC.
AMC took the Hornet and stuffed a Jeep 4-wheel drive drivetrain underneath it and jacked it up a little bit, and that was the Eagle.
That was the Eagle. It's a car.
I like.
Apparently, there were convertibles at some point. I've never seen a convertible. I've only mostly seen the sedan, but I'm looking at a picture of an AMC 1981 AMC convertible. So
I think they might have done a limited run of those with like American Sunroof or one of those companies that did some convertible conversions.
It's like the Nissan Murano convertible. Where it's like, what? Yeah. What? Why? That's exactly what the AMC Eagle convertible is like. But the AMC Eagle wagon. It's if I had one, I'd be like, this is awesome, until it broke down like 10 minutes after I got into the driver's side. It's just ridiculous. Good job, AMC. Way to just go for it.
Hey, I mean they were ahead of their time.
They're ahead of their time. It's like I think I talked about the Baja and the Brat in an article recently, where both of those were sort of ahead of their time. Like the Brat came out, it did all right, and then it went away, and then mini trucking happened, and you're like, oh, we missed it. And then the Baja came out because everyone's like, bring back the Brat, and they brought back they introduced the Baja, and then everyone's like, bring back the Brat. Nah, never mind. And no one bought it. And then it went away, and now small trucks are coming back, and Subaru's just like, oh, come on. And now the Baja, before the whole supply chain issues, the prices on used Bajas were going up. So I wonder what the AMC Eagle's prices are now that we have crossovers everywhere.
I'm sure it's only a matter of time before the Baja comes back now, especially if the Maverick and the Santa Cruz do well.
Yeah, we need to bring it back. Bring it back as an EV.
Yep, there you go. All right, let's see. Gifted Napper asks, thought of you guys when somebody posted this in the Mach-E forums as a way to fool the Ford driving assistants. Seems Ford owners have joined Tesla owners in the same unsafe workarounds. Totally agree with you that capacitive steering wheels should be standard. And so I'll put a link to this Twitter post in here, but it's a picture of Mach-E steering wheel, and there's a mask wrapped around the right hand side spoke with key fob and some other stuff hanging from on a carabiner from the straps of the mask. And the idea here is when you're using the Copilot, the hands-on Copilot 360 feature, because the Blue Cruise hands-free feature is only available on certain limited or divided highways. So you can't use it on other roads, but you can turn on the Copilot 360 lane keeping assist anywhere. But you're supposed to keep your hands on the wheel. And so, this is like, Tesla owners that stuff water bottles or oranges into the, between the spokes of their steering wheel. And just please don't do this. Don't ever do this.
Defeating, it's like when people like people. I remember seeing the J.C. Whitney catalog, like a thing where you could hold down, like a mechanism where you could hold down the accelerator, so you would have like cruise control-ish. I was just like, what? And as a kid, I remember seeing this as a kid. I'm like, well, this is just a bad idea. Like, what happened?
There were a lot of bad ideas in the J.C. Whitney catalog.
Yeah, the J.C. Whitney catalog was just a pile of bad ideas. But yeah, don't, because you're putting you're putting yourself, you're putting your family, your friends, anyone else is in the car, and then other people on the road all at risk because you don't want to put your hand on the wheel. How lazy are you? Maybe you shouldn't even be driving if you're that. Yeah.
Take an Uber.
Take an Uber.
Or a bus.
Or a bus or a Hyperloop.
Yeah.
Call a friend. Give them $20 to drive you around.
Okay. Finally, Nth Degree Burns asks, what's the one car accessory you have in every car that you own? I buy Lloyd rubber tie custom floor mats for all my cars since I have dogs and I'm bad about tracking in mud and dirt. I have them in my Chrysler Town and Country cargo area and everywhere in my Ram 1500.
Every car? I don't know. I don't think I just sort of live with it.
I'd say the only accessory that's been in all of our cars for years is a USB cable.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. A USB cable or
my wife's got all kinds of
holder.
stuff in her car.
Yeah.
But, shopping bags, things like that, reusable shopping bags. But USB cable's the only common thread across all of them.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else that I've put in like every single car. I still haven't swapped out the stereo in my BRZ because I'm just like, whatever. Because I'm more interested in what the car's doing, and like, well, it's making music. I mean, I should be able to like get text messages from my wife and listen to all my music without, having to use my phone or the weird BRZ infotainment system that you kind of have to stab really hard in order to go to the next song.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
guess
think there's anything.
The one other accessory that my wife, and I've generally not had these in my cars, but my wife likes to have a sunshade in her car that you put across the windshield, so when she
so it doesn't crack the.
Well, no, just so if it's parked in the sun somewhere, so you don't get as much solar heat load in the cabin, so it stays a reflective sun shield. So it just goes. It's usually one of those ones that it's got the spring frame that you put it together.
Oh yeah,
twist it,
as opposed to the foldy like nap ones where you're just like flop 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 flop, and then you just got like a big giant piece of aluminum foil, bubbly aluminum foil in your car.
Yeah, so that's something that my wife has always kept in her cars over the years. So.
I should get these custom floor mats though, because of the dogs. I do like rubber floor mats. Anytime I get a vehicle in and it has like the rubber floor mats, I get a little bit excited. I'm like, yeah, this is how your car is supposed to be.
I do have a seat cover that I put in whenever we go somewhere with Daisy, or prior to that with Rosie. It just hooks over the headrest and. Basically like kind of a sort of a rubberized canvas thing, but I don't keep that in the car. I only put it in when we're going somewhere with the dog.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I like the little rubberized. We have like things in the back that we put in for the dog, but we should get some rubberized stuff just because it just makes a lot more sense.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye. Boop-a-doop-a-doo.
Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.